I am tying up just a simple zebra nymph, thread body, zebra rib. I rib it with zebras. That's what makes it work. No, I'm joking. Haha. Just a thread body ribbed with wire, a tail, and a sparse thorax. Super simple nymph, super interchangeable. You can up the size or change the size, change the color, and you've got infinite imitations. So basically the main thing I wanted to get out of this video and others like it is just stressing the importance of such a simple fly and simple steps, because if you can't tie this fly right, which you might think you do, but if you don't tie this fly right, odds are you don't tie any fly right. And by right, I mean durable, consistent, not just pretty, or not just in a fashion that catches a fish before it falls apart. But I mean right as in it's going to stay together until you lose it, or it's going to look like the one before and the one after. Because it's so easy to get lost in autopilot, taking simple patterns for granted, etc. So I've went ahead and I didn't even lock in the bead. I started my thread behind it, and now it's just hanging. We're just hanging out. I'm going to add the tail. For the tail, I just guesstimate these days. Well, I don't do that, and I'm surprised I didn't mess it up. But I trim it close to what I think it should be. Then I go ahead and tie it in, and I try to tie it in short. Usually it comes out long still, but it's kind of like dubbing. If you want to figure out the right amount of dubbing, try to do too little, and you'll still probably do too much in the beginning. So, just like I said, that one came out just a touch long. I'm going to cut that out and make it perfect on my first tie so y'all all think I'm cool. So now I just shifted it up the shank a skosh. That's still a touch long, but I'm going to leave it. And ironically, I'm going to mention messing up a tail at some point and how the rest of your fly is going to be crap. But mine won't, because, I'm cool with a pH. So, I've started the thread. I've taken it down the shank one time to tie in the tail. And I made taut wraps. They're not just loose wraps. I made them with tension, so that tail's locked in. It's not going anywhere. If this was a bigger fly, like a streamer, like jig streamer, of course you want to lay down a thread base before you add in a marabou tail. But for something this delicate and this small, a fish is going to break a material before it pulls it out. And now that I've made one trip down, I'm going to go ahead and start tying in my wire as I work my thread up. I'm just going to lock it in by the tail, pull it out till it's flush, till the end is flush with behind the bead, and I just work my thread one wrap in front of the other up towards the bead. And the thing I think that people avoid doing this is that wire is relatively free to do what it wants, or free to get messed up easily. You can easily let it get turned around the shank, and now you've got this weird lump that looks like me in a t-shirt that's too tight these days. But in reality, if you use your thread tension to your benefit, you can control any material with just thread wraps. And I kept, without adjusting that wire, I kept it perfectly in line with the shank. And that's, if it's pointing down towards my desk, I will add tension as I pull the thread wrap over the shank, because that's going to pull it up. If it's pointing up and I need to get the wire down, I might make like a looser wrap, jumping some shank a bit, and come over and then cinch it down. And that's gonna, well, this one's hard to describe, and honestly I don't even know if I do it. I might just go off script and bend it down, or accept the lumpy nature like I have in that too tight of a t-shirt. So again, that's just one of those aspects that makes a super slim, super pretty fly. And it's so easy to just ignore the option and take your thread up to the bead and then lock in the wire because you feel you can control it better, which you can, but doesn't mean you can't control it with just your thread. So I'm really going to try to keep this one short. I've taken my thread to behind the bead, and now I'm going to go ahead and lock the bead in now, because if I don't, it'll mess me up. And once the bead's locked in, I can make an additional 5 to 6 wraps. And now I'm going to let the thread unwrap as I rib the wire. And that way I didn't have to fool around with a bobbin cradle or anything like that. Then just 2 wraps behind the wire, because I'm going to be coating it in resin, so I'm not worried about overly tying in or locking in the wire. And now, before I coat the fly, I'm going to go ahead and add the thorax, which is, I got to think of some new material on this one. I've already regurgitated the same 2 jokes on both previous takes. So this is it's about a half and half blend of Fulling Mill Ultra Nymph Dub and Psychedelic Dark Olive, and Phasna Gray or Natural or whatever Squirrel Dub, but the peacock variation. And both of these dubbings have been 2 of my favorite here recently. The Squirrel Dub from Phasna, he sent me recently as a sample, and I've got probably 10 to 15 packs on order already. It's just some of the best Squirrel Dub I've used. And it's got both the natural line as well as the flash blend, which is super subtle. It has all the right characteristics without just being inundated with shine. And the psychedelic dubbing from the Ultra Nymph Dub line is just super fluorescing. It's kind of like a dubbing in the color you're looking for, the dark olive, for example, but it comes with the same characteristics of like a Wapsi rainbow scud dub. It's got the just random off the wall colors in it, and then like I said, they all fluoresce. It's just cool. So back to the fly. I've added just a super sparse dubbing noodle, kept it tight. I want it to be controllable. I don't want it to basically tell me where it's going. I'm gonna tell it where to lie. And before I wrap it, I'm just going to put too much resin on the body, and then have to stick my fingers in the toxic crap and forget to wash them in just a minute. And so now the body's got a thin coating, and I'm just going to add a touch of resin behind the dubbing so that it acts as head cement when I'm done. And I add the thorax, then I add a couple wraps I jump the thread in front of the thorax and then pull it back behind the bead, and now I'm like cinching the thorax up. I'm pulling the thread tight and it pulls the thorax with it. And that's just going to keep the thorax in place longer. That's happened on all 3 flies, and it's usually awesome, but this one left a lot of scrap thread. So I'm just gonna try to get this tail a little prettier before I cure it. Before I cure it of its ailments. My mama wanted me to be a doctor, and now I'm playing with animal fur. It's weird when I pull out the Georgia accent. That was not intended. But I digress. So now I cure the fly, and as you can see, just the crazy colors that a second ago were fairly drab, and I mean, you notice they're there, especially with the camera zoomed in, but obviously you notice them just a little bit more when that UV light hits it. And I'm not gonna pretend like I know the UV light effects in the natural real world. Like, I don't think the sun is like a UV torch. Actually, I guess it is. I could set my resin flies outside and the sun will do my work for me. But regardless, I don't know when these fibers are most visible, and I really don't care. They look cool to me, and I feel like they've got to have an effect at some point. Good, bad, or indifferent, but they're psychedelic. That's all I know. Wonder where they got that name. Alright, my jokes are going to crap. So, this is probably where I should end and realize I did it too long again. So that's it. I hope you picked up some things, or if anything else, just kind of take a moment to reevaluate. You know, are you tying on autopilot, or are you tying with intent, tying with purpose? Because it makes a difference.